Good morning. With the release of Elden Ring Nightreign now 2 weeks away, and it hitting #1 on Steam's top sellers list for overall revenue, I figured, why not talk about returning bosses from Bloodborne?
Gives me conniptions.
Using the most respected and agreed upon boss order made by the Escapist, it's even got a Roblox tag,
Conniptions.
I'm gonna go over each boss. Sound good? Great. Cleric Beast. Yeah, throw his ass in there. Imagine being in a wide open field and he screeches at you while completely destroying your camera controls, or ultimately they just teleport you to that bridge up in Yharnam. Guess Coin would be next, and he's gotta be added in. The phase 2, the parrying, just adding a gun and a music box and you got the fight right there, easy peasy. I'm starting to realize this may sound a little crazy, like I don't understand how Nightreign is supposed to work. That's fine. You can put Bloodstar Beast in a cave, see what happens. Seriously though, all three of them would work great as fights, especially Bloodstar Beast, who would work very well as a fight that depends on trading his aggro. Same could be said for Gascoigne, I guess, to a lesser extent. Vicar Amelia isn't exactly one I would see working so well, not necessarily due to the gameplay of her fight, but I find it hard to imagine her being divorced from that whole healing church situation. And everyone loves Hemwick Charnel Lane, right? So why not throw all those fucked up witches in a fight and have all three Nightfarers panicking to find the hidden witch controlling the fight? Seems like it would be fun enough. But it would probably be better placed by a different group fight, like the Shadows of Yharnam. This fight would be perfect for Nightreign. Each player has their own boss to 1v1, and when one dies, the other two get buffed. Probably lead to some funny moments where two end up dying, and then the last one gets buffed up and starts kicking the ass of the final Nightfarer before the other two manage to get into melee range and help them out. Especially with that big snake whipping around and coming out of the ground and all that. And moving on to Rom, despite the fact she's directly connected to the Blood Moon and the whole game-changing, we already saw a Centipede Demon in the Nightreign playtest, and little bits of it splitting off as you damage it, which I feel like are similar enough in gameplay to how Rom's spiders work. However, Rom is a much slower boss due to depending on said spiders, which would actually turn Rom into more of a horde fight, especially if they added a couple new mechanics to her, making the spiders more important to deal with first, rather than just going straight for attacking her. And then there's Dark Beast Parl, which is pretty similar to Bloodstar Beast, at least in how the fight would go. Not exactly, attacks or anything. But I specifically find myself interested in how damaging it breaks off parts of its body. Like, if they change the electricity current to strike out of its limbs, or lightning strikes to get called down as it gets more agitated. Or, hell, if they want to piss off the fan base, then they can make it where the electricity chains between Nightfarers, which they shouldn't, but imagine all the complaining you'd hear. People tend to be less fond of a boss like the one Reborn due to the elevated witches and having to kind of deal with them shooting out projectiles. But if you put the witches on the same level as the one Reborn, it would kind of work itself out. I think that's the main issue that a lot of people have with the fight. I actually kind of enjoy the one Reborn, but I would probably still pass on it being added to the game. In terms of bosses that I actually think would work better with multiple people than they do solo, I personally would have to put a vote in for Martyr Ligarius. His attacks have these big, sweeping ranges and can definitely catch players off guard that aren't familiar with him. He doesn't even need to have minions added or anything to help with him, as he shoots out those skulls and his spells and whatnot and plants his sword in the ground that ends up launching projectiles at you. I feel like that's more than enough to keep him in the fight and not just have you all, locked down on him. I also can't help but imagine him going up into the air over Raider's big block ult and just diving down onto it. It seems like it would be a very fun moment to have. And then you can move on to the Amygdala, which is very iconic, obviously, for dragging you into the DLC. It, uses its own arms as weapons partway through the fight and has these, like, wider range attacks, which are pretty cool. Which I think is enough of a reason to add it, honestly. But also, I mean, they could just add it and have it grab you to send you into the Nightreign DLC, because we all know how much FromSoft loves messing with players. Despite how stupid of an idea that would be for a multiplayer FromSoft game. They definitely shouldn't do it like that. Then moving on to Celestial Emissary, which I actually think would be better as a mini-boss. When we were exploring in the Nightreign playtest, we saw some pretty similar fights, like the worm faces that spread Deathblight, or the ancient heroes of Zamor. It would essentially work the same as it does in Bloodborne. I don't think they'd really have to change anything. I think it would just fit in. So, I was reading through the whole boss order thing from the Escapist, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I would not have put the DLC fights as Celestial Emissary, so I'm not going to. Then we have Ibritus, whatever. Daughter of the Cosmos. She would be pretty good for Nightreign. No, she wouldn't. She's peaceful. In Bloodborne, she doesn't attack until you attack her, and it's the same thing as if they added Priscilla from Dark Souls 1. I just don't think that I would be very fond of the idea. Then, moving on to Murgo's Wet Nurse, this is a big yes for me. Keep the baby crying and everything as the whole vibe of the fight, kind of this uncomfortable situation. I mean, hell, throw her in as an invasion as well. You start hearing the baby crying first, and then she appears, and the darkness surrounds you, and then the multiple Murgo duplicates start coming after you. It just feels like it's too good of a fit. Okay, now we can move on to the DLC, and start with Ludwig, obviously. I mean, yeah, if you were gonna add a big beast wielding a sword as a boss, you can't really beat him or Sif. Also, the Moonlight Greatsword is super iconic. I'm not sure if certain bosses are going to have set drops, but you could add a chance for him to drop the Moonlight Greatsword itself, if he were added. Already having the big sweeping attacks, as previously mentioned, with a lot of the other bosses, projectiles from the Moonlight Greatsword itself, him being able to jump into the sky. I think he'd kick ass as a Nightreign boss, personally. He could also invade if you really wanted to, although I do think he would work better as a Night 2 boss, but invasion's on the table, like Margit. I'm normally a pretty big defender of Lawrence. I know a lot of people consider him just a reskin fire version of Cleric Beast, kind of like how Asylum Demon has Demon Fire Sage in Dark Souls 1. But the difference here is that, there's like lore reasons behind it I'm not going to get into. But despite me being a defender of him, I don't really see much of a point in making him a boss in Nightreign. You could kind of fuse Cleric Beast and Lawrence together, and then make Lawrence the whole, like, flame version as a Phase 2 for the Cleric Beast itself. Doesn't seem like too bad of an idea. Then there's the Living Failures, which would probably just be another mini-boss. I wouldn't really change anything about them. They just would do the same thing as the other mini-bosses. And then obviously, there's one of the best fights in all of the FromSoft catalog, being Lady Maria. She really doesn't need many changes at all. Just keep her super aggressive like she already is, and have all of her blood slashes, and you've really got a great fight. You could put her in Phase 2 immediately if you really wanted to, but I feel like that transition attack would be really good to keep, so. She's just also another fight that would work great as an invader, I would imagine. If we're talking about bosses that definitely need to invade you, I think it would have to go to Orphan. Just imagine, you're walking around exploring, you're looting a place, and then suddenly you hear his screams echo out, and he's already on you. He's already super fast, he jumps at you, lunges through the air, has those sweeping attacks that I love bringing up for all these bosses. He's like one of the most aggressive bosses in FromSoft games in general, if not the most aggressive. He's perfect. I feel like you wouldn't need to change much about him. Don't add Gearman. That guy's a creep. But if you did, he would actually be a pretty good invader. Lastly, we have Moon Presence, and word on the street is one of the Night Lords is named Augur, and is already similar to the Moon Presence. So that sounds good to me. I don't really have any complaints about that. They already have that sorted. I know what you're thinking. Meep-son, you forgot a boss. No, I didn't. Mikolash would change Nightreign fundamentally. I mean, he'd make it the greatest game of all time, frankly. And that's all that needs to be said. For this last section, I'm going to go through the Chalice Dungeon bosses very quickly and decide if they should be mini-bosses. Images will be on screen for you to look at, so make sure you're looking. Yes, make a duo with Pethumer and Elder. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes. And as for Queen Yarnum, well, she's already in the game. Look at her closely. Now close your eyes. Open your eyes. Realistically speaking, we obviously know not to expect any Bloodborne bosses in Nightreign. I understand that, but the hunter can dream. Thanks for watching the video. If you're interested in more content like this, or coverage of Nightreign, I'm currently planning on tackling content surrounding the game. And even if you aren't interested in just Nightreign, I'm planning on doing some more variety content in the future after the initial rollout of Nightreign passes. So if you enjoyed the video, or just my style of content, from this one video, any likes or subscriptions would be greatly appreciated, as well as any discussion you'd like to have with me in the comments. I would actually like to see people kind of speculate with me about what they would do to change some of these bosses. Hell, you don't even have to talk about Bloodborne ones if you want to talk about Dark Souls ones. I wanted to originally make this a video about Dark Souls bosses, but I didn't have enough time to go through all of them from Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. Kind of started this video project a little bit late. But if you do want to watch a video talking about Dark Souls bosses, well, it isn't all of them. There is a pretty good video by MrTommo Talks Games, I'm going to have linked in the description, going over 15 Dark Souls bosses that he thought needed to return in the game, and I think he makes some very interesting points in there. There were some points that I had already written out in a script that got scrapped, and me and him seem to agree on a lot of that. All footage that has shown up on screen that is not mine is going to be linked in the description, and remember, no matter how bad things get, you are loved. In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.